Good morning, everybody. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a great week so far. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with organizational updates. Our early bird registration for the 2024 North Carolina Affordable Housing Conference is now open. Just as a reminder, we are presenting this conference with our partners at the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, Central Community Capital. So each year, this conference features a ton of informative and we hope are relevant breakout sessions and includes an inspiring opening session. A broad range of breakout sessions will include topics for all affordable housing professionals, ranging from tax credits, homeownership, housing counseling, nonprofits, and more. This conference is going to take place this year on September 5th through the 6th at the Raleigh Convention Center. So make sure you get our best rate by registering before the close of business day on August 9th, and check out our agenda to see what we have in store for our attendees. There's going to be information about hotels, speakers, and sponsors continuing to be updated through the link on our call notes. But you can already check out information for the hotel and register this week if you would like. And you can find that link on our website as well as our call notes. Our keynote speaker this year we're really excited to announce is North Carolina Central University men's basketball coach LaVelle Moton, who is working through his company, Raleigh Raised Development, to create affordable housing in the Southeast Raleigh neighborhood where he grew up. So really excited about that piece. Also want to go ahead and move on to federal updates, but before we do, just want to highlight that tomorrow we are going to be closed for Juneteenth. So our offices will be closed for Juneteenth. Moving on to federal updates, HUD awards $10 million in grants to combat the homeownership gap through housing counseling. And so they announced this yesterday. Under its homeownership initiative, 23 HUD-approved housing counseling agencies, including us, the North Carolina Housing Counseling, the Housing Coalition, which was awarded a little shy of $700,000. Just as a reminder, although we are not a housing counseling agency, what we do serve as is a pass-through agency and an intermediary for our wonderful housing counseling agencies through the North Carolina Housing Counseling Network. House appropriators in Congress also are continuing to work on partisan fiscal year 25 spending bills, while the Senate appropriations leaders are also debating top-line funding allocations. So at the federal level, what we're still doing is we're still pushing along with our partners, and we're still asking folks to advocate alongside the National Low-Income Housing Coalition and many others for Congress to increase HUD funding. The Republican-led House is likely to slash funding. However, still, the Democrat-controlled Senate and Republican-led House still have to come to a final agreement. Since it is an election year, there will likely be a continuing resolution to avoid a shutdown, and budget negotiations will resolve after the election. Moving on to state updates, we are also kicking off budget conversations. So the North Carolina House, their revised fiscal year 24 through 25 budget proposal was released yesterday evening. There are a few changes to housing funding. There has been a proposed decrease to the Housing Reserve Appropriation, which was created last year for the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's Workforce Housing Loan Program. So the proposed decrease for fiscal year 25 is from $45 million non-recurring to $10 million non-recurring. And there has been a proposed $1.1 million increase to the Aging Adults Home Repair and Improvements Program, a $35 million non-recurring increase return from their county funds from the fiscal year 22 through 23. And this is being reverted to the Housing Trust Fund. The leftover emergency rental assistance money, phase 2 money, which is about $58.6 million in non-recurring fund, is being reallocated as follows: $35 million to the Workforce Housing Loan Program, to replace the previous budget's $35 million appropriation from the Housing Reserve to the Workforce Housing Loan Program. I'll say that one more time. So with leftover emergency rental assistance money from Phase 2, $35 million of that money will be allocated to the Workforce Housing Loan Program to replace the previous budget appropriation, because that was from the Housing Reserve to the Workforce Housing Loan Program. And $23.6 million to the State Housing Trust Fund, but it must be used to comply with the requirements with under Emergency Rental Assistance Phase 2. There also were a few technical changes. There's increases to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's bond and construction loan debt limit from $3 billion to $12 billion, which is a great thing. And it also clarifies that information obtained by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency for the purposes of housing survivors of domestic violence, sexual abuse, and human trafficking are not public records. We are still digging into this, and we're going to be asking a few questions today and throughout the week. And as we know more, we promise to let you all know more and continue to dive into it and give a better analysis. But those are some of the key highlights so far. Moving on to local updates. Tonight, there will be a vote in the city of Concord for local budgets. For those of you that are in the local government world, you know that local governments have until June 30th to pass their budget for the next year. So a lot of budgets are being passed currently. There is a local chapter of the Freedom Federation in Forsyth County that's hoping to influence more funds for housing into the city budget for Winston-Salem, where the city staff proposed a 10% increase in property taxes and a $1 million decrease in housing funding. So a bit of a tension point there. In Greensboro, there's evictions continuing to plague renters across the county. A grassroots group is pushing the city to find a solution. So housing advocates in Guilford County have successfully gotten over $440,000 in funding for the TEAM project, or also known as Tenant Education and Mediation Project, into the proposed budget, and council will vote on the final budget later today. Also want to highlight that the application period for Haywood County's Homeownership Assistance Program has reopened. This application period is for eligible storm-displaced homeowners and first-time home buyers seeking financial help with purchasing a home in Haywood County. The program, which is administered in partnership with the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, paused applications in late April to ensure that available federal funds would be able to cover applications that were already in process. More than $1 million is already available to offset homeownership costs, including up to 30% in down payment assistance and up to 5% in closing cost assistance. Homeownership, homebuyer education, and counseling are also offered, and details about the eligibility and awards, as well as the program manual, can be found on their webpage, which we will have linked in the call notes. And the City of Charlotte's Department of Housing and Neighborhood Services recently held a Faith and Housing Summit. Over 350 attendees from over 100 faith-based organizations gathered to learn, share, and network about affordable housing. And the breakout sessions were divided into a few categories, discussing land, capital, and buildings. It looks like it was an awesome event, and the slide decks, the presentations from that event, can be found in our call notes through a link. This seems to be a really common trend happening, continuing to happen, or really to resurface, where you see a lot of faith-based organizations kind of resuming what is really a traditional role in community development, and really kind of jumping back into thinking about how they can help address affordable housing. Moving on to events, I want to lift up a few. So FDIC is hosting an affordable housing forum in North Carolina today from 9:30 to 12 at the Spark Conference Center in Raleigh. There is registration information here. Unsure if you can still join, but likely they will have some materials that we can send out later. Another webinar that I want to lift up this week is Lessons from 40 Years of Public Housing Policy. Where do we go from here? And this is hosted by the Urban Institute and the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities from 1 to 2:30 p.m. on June 20th, so this will be on Thursday. And then North Carolina's Disaster Response and Resilience Network will be hosting a webinar, 2 webinars actually, one today at 2 p.m. titled Improving Household Financial Preparedness for Disasters, and one on Thursday at 2 p.m. titled Understanding Disaster Mitigation Options for Households. Also on Thursday, because it is clearly a very popular day for housing, the State of the Nation's Housing 2024 report will be released and discussed by the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard at 12 p.m. So you have something to do at 12 p.m. and at 2 p.m. And then you also have another option from the Nonprofit Quarterly webinar discussing how remaking the economy, looking at how policy can help tenants purchase their homes from 2 to 3:30. So a lot of different options. Moving on to reports and resources, there have been a few pieces that we want to lift up to you all. The first is from the Bipartisan Policy Center, and it looks at a poll, a National Housing Conference poll, a Morning Consult poll, and from another organization looking at the U.S.'s different opinions on housing affordability. Again, this is out of the Bipartisan Policy Center. And it really showcases how many people truly are thinking about housing and about housing affordability. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities released a piece talking about how policymakers can actually solve homelessness by scaling up proven solutions, and it specifically looks at rental assistance and supportive services. And so if you remember that framework that we use, we talk about, yes, increasing the supply, right, the increase of new supply, preserving supply we have, and the importance of services like subsidy, but also stability. So stabilizing interventions are really critical. The Joint Center for Housing Studies from Harvard released a piece talking about high housing costs and how they're consuming household incomes. And so going into depth a little bit more about what cost burden looks like for a variety of households and how that is impacting them. And last but not least, talking about a piece, want to just lift up a piece from the Urban Institute, talking about rent reporting and the promised greater credit access and how we need more transparency to know whether it succeeded or not, and looking at how those programs have actually fared after their implementation. There are also several pieces in the news that we hope you all will enjoy. There's a piece from Politico talking about how soaring insurance rates do still offer an existential challenge to affordable housing. And there's another piece about from Politico as well, talking about with 6 states where housing is hard to find and what governors are doing about it. And from USA Today, talking about a supposed welcome shift in the housing market. So there's been a lot of debate about whether there has been a welcome shift or not and who that is actually benefiting. With that, I will leave you. Just a reminder, you can always reach out and let us know if there's something in particular that you want us to talk about. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Remember, tomorrow offices are closed, but we'll be back right after that, and we will talk to you next time.